Dr. Ramdas Pai, Chancellor of the University, Professor Aravind Kumar, distinguished participants in the seminar, Vice Chancellors, members of the faculties, dear students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here at the inaugural of this national seminar organized by Manipal Center for Asian Studies. We are only 12 years into this new century, and yet the changes, social, cultural, and of course economic, that we are witnessing worldwide are significant, rapid, awe-inspiring, and sometimes even dislocating. In that context, to infer how the 21st century would unfold for Asia is not going to be easy. Yet, I would like to emphasize with some determination and hope that the 21st century could well be shaped by Asia. I cannot say whether we are destined to make this an Asian century, but I am sure that we have to strive for such an outcome. I am fully aware that challenges that we face to fulfill such a wisdom are not exclusively economic, but I intend to briefly share some thoughts relevant to this discussion, primarily focusing on economic factors. Asia embodies immense social, cultural, and economic heterogeneity. Yet, many Asian economies share a common pattern of historical evolution and economic development. In this vastly populous continent, we also find economies that are at various stages of maturity. At one end of the spectrum are economies like Japan that have experienced a sustained economic prosperity and now find themselves in a phase of relatively sluggish economic growth. At the other end of the spectrum are economies like China and India that are experiencing a rapid growth even as the world is grappled with uncertainty and highly volatile markets. Apart from the so-called newly industrialized Asian economies like South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan and Singapore that have done well over the past few decades, economies in Southeast Asia, most prominently Indonesia, are on their way to catching up with the major emerging economies. China has already overtaken Japan as the world's second largest economy. The transformation in Asia must be understood in the context of shifts taking place in the world economy. As we are all aware, following a staggered recovery from the economic crisis in 2008, widespread economic problems have surfaced in Europe, presenting a further setback to the global economic recovery. The sovereign debt crisis in the Eurozone has deepened without a decisive resolution in sight. In this context, the growth performance of Asian economies in the short to medium term is crucial not only to keep the engine of growth going, but also to hasten recovery from the present global slump. The current situation presents some unique opportunities. A crisis of the magnitude that we are witnessing compels us to take notice of our deficiencies, suitably reorient our policies, and redefine our priorities. While economic challenges faced by each Asian country are unique, and there is no one-size-fits-for-all future trajectory of economic development, there is a worldwide recognition of the fact that most Asian economies, including India, are poised to attain sustained long-term growth, notwithstanding some short-term policy challenges. Timely policy interventions helped most of the Asian economies, including India, to recover quickly from the crisis of 2008-9. In 2010, as per IMF estimates, Asia's real GDP growth of around 8.2% outpaced growth of other regions of the world, with China and India being in the forefront. The Indian economy, in particular, recovered with an average growth of 8.4% in the 2 years following the crisis year of 2008-9. Since then, factors including monetary and fiscal policy lightening, uncertainties in capital flows and slowdown in external demand have impacted the growth performance of these economies to varying degrees. India's growth in 2011-12 is estimated to have slowed down to 6.9%. With the heightened uncertainty in the Eurozone, the short-term concern at present is regarding the reversal in financial institutional investments flows, leading to increased currency volatility in several Asian countries. We in India are witnessing unprecedented depreciation of the rupee vis-à-vis US dollar, with the current account deficit widening to around 4% of GDP. Even in such scenario, which is being addressed by a slew of policy measures, the IMF expects growth in Asia and Pacific region to gain momentum in 2012, with growth projected at 6% in 2012 and 6.5% in 2013. With a reasonably quick recovery, emerging economies in Asia are generally better placed vis-à-vis other emerging economies to withstand the fresh round of the global economic turmoil. In the long term, a key advantage that Asian economies, prominently India and China, possess is high rate of savings and investment. Large size of the domestic market, coupled with the mechanisms to harness potential demographic dividends, can lend robustness to the Asian growth story. India's resilience, in particular, results from the fact that the bulk of India's GDP is driven by the domestic demand. A calibrated approach to capital account convertibility by India has to a significant extent prevented surge and reversal of the debt-creating capital flows. India's banking sector is robust and export basket is increasingly getting diversified, with developing countries being our largest export partners. Our evolving regulatory mechanisms have been successful in ensuring financial sector robustness in the economy. These policy measures by India are slowly gaining recognition as best practices in Asia and elsewhere, worthy of emulation in post-crisis world. China's policy too has started emphasizing a growth strategy that is more dependent on domestic demand. Asian economy in general have evolved to be attractive distinctions of the foreign direct investment, which is aiding innovation in these economies. As per Global Innovation Index 2011, published by INACAD and the World Intellectual Property Organization, several Asian economies, including Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan and China, count among the world's leading innovators. Many of these economies are not just successful growth stories, but also examples of successful public policy experiments that achieved growth via export orientation, macroeconomic stability, and innovative institution building. It attracted investment, which in turn propelled them up in the manufacturing value chain. Needless to say, we all need to keep drawing appropriate lessons from these economies while they need to sustain their achievements to perform even better in the course of the Asian century. There are, however, several challenges that we face. A major one is to devise ways in which the fruits of high growth can benefit the poorest of the poor. Poverty and inequality, with their associated ills, continue to be the single most common challenge in Asia. Going forward, GDP growth in many developing nations must be accompanied by measures aimed at fulfilling the aspirations of young population, just as social security compulsions would assume prominence in the aging societies. We need to ensure adequate investment and utilization of funds in sectors like health, education, skill development that are crucial for human capital build-up. We must also create employment opportunities so that there is a broad-based stake created in the growth process. Successful models of financial inclusion need to be replicated to address the economic well-being of the disadvantaged and the marginalized sectors of the society. Most importantly, governance structures in Asia need to evolve to address these requirements. Resolution of long-standing political conflicts, managing urbanization, addressing climate change issues, and containing the adverse effects of a rapidly deteriorating natural environment that is facing the pressure from burgeoning populations are some of the other emerging challenges that confront many of us in Asia. Lack of infrastructure and dearth of resources to finance large-scale infrastructure initiatives stand in the way of achieving inclusive growth in many economies, including India. Energy needs that are sure to grow as the benefits of growth get further dispersed are a major concern. Investment in renewable energies as well as in technologies that make such sources of energy cost-effective must therefore gain pace. I must stress that collaborative efforts are a must to tackle these issues that result in strengthening of the cross-country institutions and delivery mechanisms within country where these are needed the most. While recent efforts like setting up of an Asian infrastructure fund would surely address some of the problems outlined by me in previous paragraphs. Asian economies need to collectively think on channels of engagement with each other that create synergies directed at addressing the common challenges. We must appreciate that to gain in unison, we need to act in unison. Even in existing multilateral fora, including G20 or International Monetary Fund, we should aim at coordinate more in areas where there is significant collective gain to be achieved. Finally, I would like to underscore that the existing divide between the advanced and developing Asia must be bridged to make the 21st century an Asian century. To this end, while advanced Asia must maintain its economic miracle, an environment must be created for the rest of the catch up and prosper. Ultimately, it would depend on how individual Asian economies manage their rise strategically in order to coexist and co-prosper, develop together. Let me conclude by congratulating the organizers of this seminar, and wishing you all a very constructive deliberations. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the patience.